Help me ducks, it's Simon here. Welcome back to the Hermit's Cave. So as promised yesterday, when I did the live Christmas Cup of Catchman cards with my lovely friend Jennifer Ball, which I adored, by the way. I really enjoyed doing that. It was such good fun. We talked a little bit about the year ahead card. And I didn't pay much attention to 2020 because with it being the end of the year, we focused on what our 2019 cards had brought us. And mine for 2019 was the Sun card. So do, if you get a chance, have a look back at yesterday's live Christmas Cup of Catchman cards. You'll hear me talk about why the Sun card was quite an apt card for me during 2019, even though at times during the year it didn't seem to, I didn't feel that it was going to be perhaps a Sun year. But tarot knows best. If you are watching for the first time, in as much as you didn't get to see yesterday's, this is the way that you work out your year ahead card. So it is your birthday and month, day and month, plus the year ahead. So my birthday is the 15th of October, and I'm working out my year ahead card for 2020. So it's 1 plus 5 plus 1 plus 2 plus 2, which gives me 11, which is justice. And this is where it gets quite confusing, because some people are like, well, mine comes to 11, so do I condense it down further and go 2, High Priestess? And what I would say, and it's totally up to you, is so you get the full experience of working with the major arcana and the archetypes within those each of those cards. It's usually 22 or below, 22 being the Fool, because the Fool is without number, so you'd never get to 0. So the Fool takes the end of the major arcana and becomes 22. Some people like to have 2 cards and say, well, I'm 11 and 2. Also, with it being in 11, of course, some cards, like the Marseille system, will have the Justice card as 8 and Strength as 11. But I, as a rule, tend to always go with the RWS system. So for me, and I had a Strength year a couple of years back, I'm going with the RWS system and 11 for Justice. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about the Justice card. And I do this every year towards the end of the year. I talk about my year ahead card and a little bit about the cards. And I've laid out a few of my favorite things. Now, decks that I really like, so my top 5 decks plus a few others, just to give you kind of different variations. And there are many different variations of this card. You know, I have 400 decks. I've only chosen, 9 or 10? 9 here, 10 when we start to look at the RWS card. So we've got Pagan Otherworlds, which is, you know, most of these will be a female holding a set of scales. This is very RWS inspired, so this might hurt. Sword in the air, as above so below representation. Here we've got quite different with the Light Seers Tarot, where the scales are balanced on the actual sword, and it's a 2-handled sword. Marseille is very in keeping with RWS as well, in terms of the 2 pillars, the curtain, the position of the sword and the scales, etc. We have Deviant Moon here, which is quite different. It's 2 swords being held up. This is from Lily White. Have Lily black and white, but the image was quite sharp, more sharper on here. But you've got everything here. You've got the female energy of the High Priestess. You've got the elements. You've got this little drawing on her cheek under her eye. The eye is important, particularly if we're talking about third eye, which appears in RWS, and the sword upright. Here we have Anna Kay, actually using a book as well. And then the Justice card here in the Druid Craft Tarot. And here we have something quite different, which is from the everyday enchantment, Poppy Palin's deck, where there's somebody here having to resolve a conflict. She's trying to weigh up the position of her hands, you know, who's right, who's wrong. Is there anybody who's right or wrong? But there's these angry and upset people that she's having to weigh up. And you can see here the scales of Libra in her pendant around her neck, which is, and you've got these two little demons here representing the conflict that's going on between these people. So some really nice cards. I'm going to move them to one side for a minute because I want us to focus on the RWS. We may come back to some of them as I start to talk about. I think I'm going to zoom in a little bit. How's that? Yeah, that's pretty good. Okay, so the Justice card, and I was really pleased. I've got to say, I was really pleased about pulling this card because my birth sign, sun sign, star sign, however you want to term it, as I've mentioned many, many times, I'm not that up on astrology, but I am Libra. I am an air sign, and the scales of justice and Libra has always been something that's probably been a strength of mine. I have been able to be a peacemaker throughout my life. I have always tried to look at both sides of everything and not jump to conclusions. And if I'm honest, the one thing that probably upsets me more than anything else is injustice. I cannot bear injustice. It sits very heavy on my heart and on my mind. And if I know of an injustice, I stop at nothing to try and rectify that, try and rebalance that. I can't watch films where people are being bullied or harassed. It really, really upsets me. I watched a film 2 years ago called Detroit, and I almost left the cinema because it was people who were being so treated so appallingly and unfairly, and it was based on a true story, and I just had to sit to the end just to see the culprits get their comeuppance, and they never did. And that film still haunts me to think that that actually happened and they got away with such atrocities. I mean, you could argue, well, truth has come to light now, and truth always does find a way. It always finds a way, which also is represented within this card. However, yeah, sometimes karma isn't instant, and sometimes I wish it was more instant. But anyway, I'm going down a little tarot rabbit hole there. So the Justice card, in essence, is about that weighing up of opposing sides. And I say sides as in, you know, if there's a particular argument or conflict of some sort. And it's not always a case of right and wrong. It can be very clear as right and wrong, and the person is having to make discernment between what's right and wrong. But, you know, not everybody who's in the wrong know that they're in the wrong. And people are often looking at a certain situation from their own world viewpoint. And who is anybody else to say it is wrong? So sometimes a judgment is made and it may seem unfair, but it's not always the case. So we have to bear that in mind as well. But that person who's kind of the archetype within this card, it's imperative that that person always thinks about someone's dignity, is respectful, is being fair to all concerned, and to try to get to the heart of the matter and come up with the best solution possible, which isn't easy, of course. So we have the scales here, which is that balancing between the two different opposing forces, if you like. And then we also have the sword, which is the, what can I call it? The instrument, if you like, but that is what delivers the verdict, having made this assessment. It's the sword that cuts through, the sword that comes down and delivers that verdict. The person then has to accept truth. And as long as things like equality has been applied, then that person is knowing that they've done as much as they can. I think the Justice card also, it teaches us that the universe ultimately is a fair place. It may not always seem it, as I've said, but karma does eventually kick in, and things eventually, the truth eventually is revealed. Sometimes it's too late for individuals, and we hear, don't we, of posthumous pardons and things for people who have been wronged and unfairly persecuted or criminalized, or served time for something that wasn't quite their fault. Put this light. We need some light this time of year, don't we? So it gets us there, and it may seem like things take a long time, but the universe is ultimately a universe that is filled with love, and it is filled with fairness, and it does eventually come right. As I said, I struggle with injustice. In fact, it's probably one of the main things that keeps me awake at night. If I know there's been an injustice carried out, and particularly if I feel powerless to do something about it, it's important that we all carry these scales, that we're always trying to be fair in our decision-making processes, in our dealings with others, before we bring down the sword and make our judgments. The duty is on us to make sure that everybody has had a fair opportunity to put their case forward, that they've been able to, we're able to demonstrate that we've listened to all sides. So we have a responsibility to act in an ethical way, I think is what I'm saying, using fairness, dignity and respect for all parties. Sometimes the Justice card is talking about things that we may have done in the past as well that may not be seen as being fair to others, or just in some ways. So it reminds us that perhaps we need to make an amends for any past mistakes that we might have made, and ensure that our deeds are fair going forward. Otherwise they come back to haunt us as well. And the universe corrects everything, so we get what's coming to us too. So justice will come back to us just as it comes back to others, so that those people that we have wronged in the past get their fairness meted out to them. But if we can do something before that and put it right ourselves, then all the better. So yeah, the Justice card for me forces us to look at our lives and our dealings with other people, and to try and ensure that there is harmony and balance in everything that we do. Okay, so before I come on to why I think this card will be important for me in 2020, I just want us to look at the symbology within the card. And I get a lot from the book, The Ultimate Guide to the Rider-Waite-Smith. I love that book. It's probably my most dogged book, because I'm always thumbing through it and having a look at the meanings and things in the card. So I'll share some of those with you now. And because I've really studied this card, I can probably look at it and see everything without having to use the book for reference now. So firstly, let's look at our central figure here. So the first thing that's, other than the way that person's dressed, which we'll look at that, but the first thing that stands out to me is the magician-like pose of the as above, so below, which, shows that we're a channel between, the heaven and the earth, if that's the terminology you're used to using, but the as above, so below. And we're the connector between the two. to make sure that there is balance between those two worlds. The red robe is an indication of our emotions. So red is very fiery, isn't it? It's the things that, the passions, the things that drive us as well. But actually in the book, it talks about this being almost like a violet colour. But in this iteration of the RWS, it's very red. But it talks about the we can't just rely on our intellect alone. The heart, the red, the heart also has to play a part, and there has to be balance there too between the intellect and the emotions, the heart. I mentioned the as above, so below, and the scales and the sword. So the scales is about getting to the truth of the matter, that trying to ascertain which side is the truth. And, you know, it's the sign for Libra as well, as I mentioned, which is my birth sign. And Libra, when we think about the etymology of words, Libra also brings in liberty. So knowing that full picture and being able to make choices when you know the truth. Once you've got to the heart of the matter and you know the truth, then, and you've got that full picture, you're able then to make your decision, to make your choice, which brings down the sword. Remember, the sword is the instrument for implementing judgment following the assessment taking place. This has to happen before this. Anything else to say on the, yes, the brooch. So there is this brooch here, and there's all different colours brought in here. There's white, there's green, there's red. So again, in the centre, and if you can see, if I bring it up, in the centre of the brooch is this red jewel. Again, this is recognising the heart, like the robe. And it's saying, again, make sure there's balance between the mind and the heart, that the head isn't ruling the heart and the heart isn't ruling the head. If you're making this assessment, then make sure that they're perfectly aligned and perfectly in balance. The yellow and green represents growth, and that growth that comes from knowing truth. So to know the truth, we grow and we develop from that process of knowing truth, learning truth, establishing the truth. But it also warns against immaturity. So that growth leads us to maturity. And if we haven't got that in balance and we're making judgments, then that shows our immaturity. The white that surrounds the red is about the fact that openness is needed. The white is about openness. What else? So the crown that sits on the head. I mean, it's more than just decoration. There's three battlements here, plus the jewel. So you've got four things here, three battlements plus the jewel, which epitomizes feminine, masculinity, the spiritual, and then the jewel being the material world. So you've got all four together: masculine, feminine, spiritual, and then the material world. So the jewel being a crystal, very much part of the earth, the material world, the physical world as well. Interestingly too, the jewel is placed with the third eye, which reminds us that a higher intuition is needed to be able to resolve those conflicts and to spot any sort of contradictions that we might need to be mindful of and weed out, if you like. So I love that balance there of having them all together. We have two grey columns. Okay, so those two grey columns, grey is the colour of neutrality. So being neutral, and the space is being occupied between the two columns. So this has to be a fair and neutral space whilst this assessment is taking part. So really occupying that space. So if we're coming to a situation where we're going to have to make a judgment following an assessment, then the space must be a neutral space so that everybody can be heard. Everybody can have their voices listened to. You know, we might not have the columns here, but we have somebody weighing up in a neutral space when you've got two opposing forces, both thinking that they're right. Okay. So, and again, you know, this appears in Marseille decks. May not be grey, but you've got the two columns there as well. So that's quite interesting. I suppose as well, there is a warning here with having that neutral space that there will be initially a lack of full awareness, and that could be a danger point between these two columns, particularly because of this curtain behind. So I'll come on to the curtain because this is probably, for me, one of the most significant parts with the symbology of this card, and I hadn't considered it until quite recently. So the curtain is actually a blind spot. So you've got these two columns that is offering you that neutral space, but there is a curtain being hung up here, and this person has the back to the curtain. So it's a blind spot where the truth is trying to be hidden. Now we have a yellow background here, which represents the sun, going back to the sun card, where the sun, you know, is clear, it's conscious, it's, you know, it's in the light, and this curtain is hung up to try and block that out. So this is a blind spot, but interestingly, whilst the judgment, the assessment is taking place, the sword is rising above this blind spot. It's rising above. So that's really, for me, that was kind of like, wow, yeah. So, you know, we've got this curtain, which demonstrates, you know, sensitivity is needed, openness, sensibility as well as sensitivity, and the scales weighing up what is uncertain, which is in front of the curtain, but the judgment that is being made is coming from a clear, conscious place where doubts aren't obscured, where untruths will have their light shined on them, where trickery will be exposed. And you know, the sun cannot ultimately be kept from shining its light. You can't cover up the whole sky. You can't cover up or block out the sun for too long. You know, light always finds a way. And I think it's beautiful that the judgment rises up above this blockage to really tap into that clarity and that conscious light. Have I covered everything? I think I have. I think I've gone through everything in the card. So yeah, my 2020 year ahead card, and I'm really pleased about it. I think what it speaks to me is that I need to be wiser in my judgments. I do need to think more about the needs of others. I need to be fair in my dealings and in my relationships with other people. And try and be more in the light. Draw upon my sun year and what this year has taught me as I go through into 2020, but also for me to have the courage to constructively criticize, if needed. I don't think there's any benefit or any need to be unfairly critical, but you can be a critical friend. You can give constructive criticism, feedback, but also give praise where needed. And this is something I'm always trying to do, particularly as a manager in my work, is, sometimes things aren't to a certain standard and I have to criticize, but it's always, I'm always somebody who tries to, do the poop sandwich with good, poop, good. Because we're about lifting each other up, not pushing each other down. So for me, it's about being wise in my judgments, thinking about the needs of other people, and try to be fair, use dignity, and be respectful in all of my dealings with others and in my personal relationships. But also have that courage to use discernment and criticize constructively and lift people up where needed, and just try to get to the heart of the matter, not to be shrouded with uncertainties and doubts. Rise up and use my thinking from a clear and concise space. Wow, so I'd love to hear about your 2020 cards. Thank you for letting me ramble on for goodness knows how long, about 20 minutes, I think, maybe more, about this card. Yeah, I'd love to hear yours. So don't forget the formula for working out. Day, month, and then 2020 will give you your year ahead card. Okay, so thank you for watching, guys. And until next time, go in peace. Namaste and blessed be.